Good morning and greetings from Northumberland. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of March. It's a bit of a damp and misty morning, showing us that spring isn't fully here in all its splendour. In one of my calendars of Celtic saints, it's the feast of St. Non, mother of St. David. But more principally in our household feast, there's a more major occasion, and so I begin this morning by saying happy birthday to Lynn, my wife. She likes to see me first of all on film. It prepares her for the real thing a little bit later on. So happy birthday, Lynn, and have a good day. In the Gospel today, Jesus is talking about his going to Jerusalem and the ensuing suffering. And we have this marvellous interjection from the sons of Zebedee asking about good places in the kingdom. And we all know how that story ends, and it's not really well for them. They really cause a bit of resentment with the other disciples. But Matthew goes on, it's the mother of the sons of Zebedee that do it, but we all know they're all in it together. The 10 were angry. But then Jesus called them and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants. It will not be so among you. Whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave." And that took me back really to the story of Chad yesterday. You remember I talked about Chad being appointed in Wilfrid's place to the bishopric of York, because Wilfrid was off gallivanting in Europe and didn't come and take up his responsibilities. But then Wilfrid came back and had the legal right to the job, and Chad, in the face of a possible conflict, stood back in order to preserve peace. And it was that action that so impressed the Archbishop of Canterbury that later Chad was chosen to be the bishop to the Mercians and founded that great cathedral in Lichfield. Chad showed a very Christian way of dealing with that situation. I was listening yesterday to a lecture by Esther de Waal about Celtic Christianity. We're thinking about this a lot up here because we're looking at the Celtic saints during Lent, and of course we live alongside their stories here in Northumberland. And Esther de Waal said that there were these two monasticisms, the Roman monasticism, the Celtic monasticism. And for her, the difference was the Roman was a territorial and in some ways a hierarchical monasticism, hence Wilfrid demanding his place back in York, whereas the Celtic one was a relational, both in terms of relations between people and relations between people and communities. And that's really important, I think, to think about. And the story of Chad illustrates that. And it illustrates what Jesus is saying. You are called not to be powerful and have authority, but you are called to be the servants. You are called, even as leaders, to be the people who enable others. That's something that people like me, clergy, leaders in a little way, people like bishops, leaders in a bigger way, and archbishops, leaders in an even bigger way, and so on and so forth, need to remember. It's also something that needs to be remembered in our world. Leaders really have a vocation to serve. It's not about what they get out of it. It's about what they achieve in terms of the service of others. So for me, the leader who retires rich has failed, because she or he should have been spending their time in service of others. Whereas the leader who can go back to their ordinary life when their term of leadership is over has succeeded, because they have thought to serve and not to serve themselves. Jesus calls us to a life of serving others and not to a life of self-service. May God bless us as we seek to follow that path.